Shout out to G-Man Boxing. Where's the piss bottle? It's over there.
Alright, so Eddie Hearn announced today that Anthony Joshua versus Oleksandr Usyk is likely next. It's looking good on their end in terms of just basically getting this fight over the line. Naming Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's not White Hart Lane anymore, isn't it? I think it's just called Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Nevertheless, they say that this is going to happen come September. Now, it was only, I think, a week or possibly a fortnight ago that Eddie Hearn was talking about the possibility of vacating the BBO title because, for several reasons, they said they didn't want to go to a purse bid for whatever reason. It made no sense. And if they couldn't get if they couldn't agree on a deal, i.e. Team Usyk being happy with their end of the deal, I would imagine, that they were willing to just vacate, and go and fight Dillian Whyte, Luis Ortiz, Andy Ruiz. Specifically, I think Dillian Whyte is the name Eddie Hearn wanted, and I think that was the name that they all wanted. Well, let me just talk about what's changed, I think, in the immediate time. I said it then, and I stand by firm what I said. I believe that one of the reasons why they were having so much issue with trying to get this fight over the line, originally a fortnight ago, was due to the fact that there was likely to be a rematch clause, I should say, in the contract. Now, Oleksandr Usyk, as a mandatory, he's not obliged, I've said this several times, he's not obliged to sign a rematch clause. Alright, he just isn't. Okay? Now, if you look at Kubrat Pulev, alright, that had a rematch clause in it. I think with Eddie Hearn, he's putting, and bear in mind, it's not just mandatories. He's doing this for a lot of fights. We have Josh Warrington versus Mauricio Lara coming up. Was that a 10 or 12 rounder? Irrespective, it was a non-title fight. Well, Josh Warrington had no title. That was a non-title fight. There was no major title on the line, and it still had a rematch clause. Rematch clauses, I get them for voluntaries. I do get that. But when you're putting them in with mandatories and you're putting them in for just any old fight, that to me is kind of a head scratcher. And you as a fighter, I can understand from Lara's point of view because, hey, he gets an extra payday. But if you're a mandatory challenger, you've earned that right. Exactly. Why would you want to sign a rematch clause? One of the perks of it is that you take your title and, bye-bye. Yeah, see you later. I've won. Now I'll take my belts and see you later. Bye-bye. That's one of the perks of it. So for me, I can't quite fathom why you would agree to sign one of them like Tyson Fury did it, and he ended up getting stripped by the IBF because he couldn't fight, what was the guy's name? Glasov. I think it was Vyacheslav Glasov was his name. The guy who blew his knee out against Charles Martin. That was always going to happen. You were always going to get stripped because you had the rematch clause, so you were never going to be able to defend that title, that IBF title. So why Tyson Fury got so mad about it, at the end of the day, he should have been advised, well, you don't have to theoretically sign this for a rematch clause. You're the mandatory challenger. He was mandatory with the WBO at the time. Now, Oleksandr Usyk, I don't know if anything has changed since then. At the end of the day, we haven't had an announcement for this fight. I suspect, and these are my suspicions, I suspect that there probably is a rematch clause if this fight goes ahead. What do I think has been different about this fight? I think that Eddie Hearn may have offered Oleksandr Usyk an added incentive. Possibly rematch, possibly an extra bit of money. People will always say, everyone has a price. Eddie Hearn putting these rematch clauses in, especially for someone like Anthony Joshua during the mandatory, it's an insurance policy. Eddie Hearn has the memory, because it's not that long ago, it's only 2 years ago, that AJ got knocked out by Andy Ruiz. That was a voluntary defence. They always have rematch clauses for that. But had that rematch clause not been in place, Andy Ruiz could have took them titles, got over the PBC, and Eddie Hearn would have lost his grip on the heavyweight title. So Eddie Hearn, I'm sure, is looking at Anthony Joshua and thinking, we don't need this. We need rematch clause in place in case. I'm sure Hearn has the utmost confidence in Anthony Joshua, but he, especially since he saw the Ruiz fight, I'm sure he knows anything can happen. And you have someone who's as tricky as Usyk, someone who's as good technically as Usyk, who's as fiddly as Usyk, could cause Anthony Joshua a lot of problems. Now, another thing as well, I think another reason why Eddie Hearn maybe was saying, in the past that if it went to purse bids he'd vacate, and why Eddie Hearn has always said for business they would lose one title if it needed to be. And I'm sure that Eddie Hearn if he, as I said, if he's a businessman, if he's thinking of a business perspective, he's thinking of things from a business point of view, you got to weigh up your options. Look at Oleksandr Usyk. We, the hardcores who are watching this video, we know Oleksandr Usyk is a fantastic fighter. As I've said several times, what's your perception of Oleksandr Usyk as a heavyweight? If you think he's going to tear through people, then your perception hasn't been met. But if you're someone like me who thinks he's going to win these fights based more on skill than, brute force, because he wasn't doing that at cruiserweight, then I think he's been fine at heavyweight. I think he's transitioned into it well. The one thing I don't like is the fact that he's putting on weight. We'll need to see how he looks, but personally I prefer to see Usyk in the 210s, maybe 220 max. So he's saying he's 230. We need to see how he looks, but that's a bit of a red flag for me. But Oleksandr Usyk, we all know he's a terrific fighter. We know he's superbly talented. We know he's elite. We know he's pound for pound, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on. The average casual would probably know Oleksandr Usyk as the guy who knocked out Tony Bellew, but who the hell is he? But you turn around and say Dillian Whyte. Oh, we know Dillian Whyte. He fought AJ. He got knocked out by Povetkin. He fought Povetkin in Gibraltar. He was on MasterChef? Oh, he was meant to be. So Dillian Whyte is more known to the casual audience. That's who you're selling it to. And that's who you're selling AJ fights to. So if you look at Eddie Hearn from a business perspective, you've Oleksandr Usyk, high risk. I will give AJ the utmost credit if he goes in there and does a good job on Oleksandr Usyk. But to the casual audience, they're probably going to look at him and just think, who is this guy? He's not as big as AJ. He's not, you know what I mean? Whereas you have Dillian Whyte, you could sell that because A, they have history. They've had beef in the past. Dillian Whyte is the third biggest draw in the UK in terms of heavyweights. You've obviously got AJ Fury 1 and 2 respectively, whatever way you want to put it. You would put AJ as number 1 to be fair. But then you have Dillian Whyte as number 3. So that's a big fight for the casual audience in the UK. Alright, it would be obviously on Sky Sports as AJ still has a deal with them, so it would be on pay-per-view. In terms of risk, I think that Usyk is, and I'm sure Eddie Hearn knows this, much bigger risk than Dillian Whyte. Yes, Dillian Whyte, as far as I'm concerned, is the bigger puncher of the two, that of which I've no doubt. But Dillian Whyte, he's already been beat by AJ. He's already been knocked out by Anthony Joshua. Irrespective of the Povetkin performance, he was brutally knocked out by Anthony Povetkin. He wasn't, see, here's the thing about that Povetkin fight, right? Povetkin was finished in the first fight. He found that beautiful uppercut. It was well timed. It was well placed. It was well set up. But Povetkin, if that fourth round in that first fight had been 30 seconds longer, we wouldn't even be talking about that. We'd be talking about Dillian Whyte. Maybe he would be fighting Tyson Fury next. Who knows? God only knows what will be happening with the WBC. But we wouldn't even be discussing that. How is Dillian... Because Dillian Whyte wasn't touched once in that rematch by Povetkin. How is Dillian Whyte going to be when he takes a big shot from Anthony Joshua? There's a lot of stuff needs to be asked about that. I'm sure Hearn's looking at that thinking, do you know what? Bigger payday. If you win, you'll get probably a bit more credit from the casual audience. You can build it because you've beaten Dillian Whyte. It's less risk because you've already beaten the guy already. You kind of know what to expect. If Dillian Whyte pulls it off, well, there's a rematch clause. You can run it back, and I'll make more money because there's a story behind it. It's 1-1. Who's going to win the third fight? And even still, if Dillian Whyte by some stroke of luck wins the second fight, well then, Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury undisputed anybody, or certainly unification. You see what I mean? So from a business point of view, Eddie Hearn must look at this and think, do you know what? Dillian Whyte is the guy I want. I'm not saying AJ doesn't want Oleksandr Usyk. Do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm sure Anthony Joshua, in fact, he definitely strikes me as the kind of guy who would fight anyone. He just comes across as the sort of guy where you put anyone in front of him. Like, this is a guy who was very inexperienced. He fought Vladimir Klitschko. I was picking Klitschko every day of the week going into that fight because I thought this is way too soon for Anthony Joshua. And it almost was, but still, I was amazed that he actually took the fight because in retrospect, he didn't need to. At the time, it was a massive risk. I couldn't believe it when they got that fight announced. So Anthony Joshua, I think, would relish the fight with Usyk. But that's why Eddie Hearn's the promoter. He is looking at everything from a business perspective. So I fully believe that there is a rematch clause in this contract if and when it gets announced that Oleksandr Usyk is going to fight Anthony Joshua. Because I think Eddie Hearn is thinking of his insurance, he's thinking of his investment, he's thinking of he's not just looking at at this from a fight-by-fight basis. He's looking at this 3-4 fights down the road. You know, if Anthony Joshua, if. There's always ifs. You know, you can never know. You can only suspect. And I'm sure Eddie Hearn is suspecting the worst. You know, not to say there's a difference between suspecting the worst and expecting the worst. He's obviously not expecting Anthony Joshua to lose. But I'm sure he's thinking in his head, if there's a 99% chance AJ wins, there's always that 1% chance something can go wrong. Better make sure I've got an insurance policy. So I reckon that's what's going on. I think it's an 80-20 split the WBO give to the mandatory challenger. Maybe they've increased that to something more to entice Oleksandr Usyk. Bear in mind, I've said it before, I'm just giving my 2 cents on this. But I wouldn't be shocked if we have a rematch clause in this contract, personally. At the end of the day, Eddie Hearn, this is not a knock on him, to be fair. This is more so the Fury Joshua situation. Eddie Hearn has said in the past, fight's just around the corner, fight's coming, yeah, announcement coming, boom, it didn't happen. And to be fair, I'm referring to obviously AJ Fury, and that wasn't Eddie Hearn's. Well, no, it wasn't Eddie Hearn's fault. Bob Arum, I think, knew what was going on. He knew the jazz, but Eddie Hearn didn't do any favours by, you know, bigging it up so much. So God knows what will happen. Watch this space. But when we get the announcement for this fight, I think it's going to be a good. Do I think we'll get it at this stage? I'll wait until we get the full announcement before I say yay or nay. It's looking likely, but the way boxing is, Jesus, people, God only knows. You know, that AJ Fury thing really left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, because I said it once, I say it again, they dangled that carrot. AJ Fury, yeah, AJ Fury's coming, is it? Yeah, no, it's not. So yeah, that's still fresh in people's minds. So we'll wait until we get this fight announcement before, you know, we go all balls to the wall with things. But that's just my thoughts on this. Let me know yours in the comment section. Do you think that we're getting this fight next? And if so, do you believe there'll be a rematch clause in the contract? And if so, how do you believe they've got it in there? Or do you think, like me, it could go anyway at this stage? Not in terms of the fight, in terms of, well, yes and no, the fight, not the actual fight, but in terms of, could it be Usyk? Could it go another way? Could it go, God only knows. It's heavyweight boxing. Let me know in the comment section. Leave a like on the video if you did. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I got you through a bit of your day. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Hit the notifications button. It helps your boy out a lot. It really does. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't. Hashtag GMansRocks, all that good stuff. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace. Okay, so before I go, I want to give you guys a quick update. I've started a second channel, right? It's called True Crime with G-Man. It's things I've wanted to talk about for a while. I didn't want to go and make a Patreon page because A, I don't want to charge, and B, I know I don't want to put in effort if it's not going to get any views really, or any people listening. So I decided to make a new YouTube channel. It's the second one going. It's, obviously it's YouTube, so it's free. You just go over, subscribe. Hopefully this Friday I'll have my first kind of, video / documentary kind of format style video. We're going to be talking, as it says, true crime, serial killers, true crimes, all that kind of stuff, looking at it from a psychological point of view and just giving my 2 cents on it. So go over there, subscribe please if you could. Links in the description. I'm going to put this video on the next couple of videos just to kind of get it. Hopefully we get to 100 subs before I have my first upload. So there you go, links in the description. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.